Hello everybody. In this video, we will try to understand some more interesting things about Pushyami Nakshatra. See, Pushyami Nakshatra is at the heart of Cancer sign. And Cancer sign is always about emotions. If you see the people having moon in Cancer or Cancer ascendant people, right? Majorly moon in Cancer people, they're very emotional. The kind of emotional uh, you know the kind of instability in the emotions of Cancer moon people, it's very difficult to handle, right? So, and you may think, then how this Pushyami has got some kind of emotional stability, right? In the previous video we discussed Pushyami is the region in the Cancer where at least you can get some emotional stability. In other nakshatras like Punarvasu 4 and Aslesha the whole, the kind of emotional instability, it's very difficult to handle for others also. It's not only for the Cancer moon people having Punarvasu 4 and Aslesha, not only for them, it's very difficult to handle their emotions. It's also very difficult for other persons, right? uh, for them also it's very difficult, very difficult to handle this Cancer moon people. Now, how come we get emotional stability here? And you see, the Pushyami is a Saturn nakshatra and Cancer is the region of moon. And whenever you see Saturn and moon energies are combined, that's very painful. You just observe people having Saturn and moon conjunction, right? In horoscope, people say it's a wish yoga, or they call it with different names. Even Punarpudosha is Saturn and moon, very close conjunction of Saturn moon, especially when Saturn and moon are conjoined in a Saturn nakshatra like Uttara Bhadrapada or Pushyami, another Saturn nakshatra. When Saturn and moon are very much in close conjunction in this nakshatras like Uttara Bhadrapada and Pushyami and Anuradha, to extent it is okay kind of, but especially in Uttara Bhadrapada and Pushyami, when Saturn and moon are very closely conjoined, the kind of problems even related to mother also. You can just see a lot of horoscopes having Saturn and moon conjunction in Uttara Bhadrapada, the Saturn nakshatra. The kind of problems the native's mother might have faced, or is very much indication that the native's mother had some problems, or some mothers you might be observing, they passed away very early. So that Saturn moon conjunction is always about a kind of melancholy. It's a kind of melancholy. The equation is very upset equation. You say the energies are very upset. Saturn and moon conjunction, not so good. So they have to perform some propitiations, right? The moment a native is born with Saturn and moon very close conjunction, especially in a Saturn nakshatra, that native, the moment the native is born, generally priests perform propitiations for the well-being of the native's mother. But how come Pushyami is achieving that emotional stability, at least to some extent, some good amount of extent you can say? How is it achieving? What is it making to achieve all this? It's the deity of Pushyami, that is Brihaspati. So even when Saturn and moon conjunction is happening in a Saturn nakshatra like Uttara Bhadrapada, and if the native's Jupiter is at least a bit good, then yes, the person can have the native's mother can have some good life. Even Saturn and moon conjunction in Pushyami nakshatra, if Jupiter is well placed, yes, the native's mother may lead some good life. And Saturn and moon conjunction in a Saturn nakshatra, another Saturn nakshatra, Anuradha, and if the Jupiter placement is well, yes, the native's mother can lead some good amount of life, some good life, right? But if the Jupiter's dignity is not good, let us take somebody's horoscope having Saturn Moon conjunction in Uttara Bhadrapada, very close conjunction, very bad conjunction, and Jupiter is not so well placed. Let us say Jupiter is debilitated, and yes, the native's mother might have so many problems, and sometimes the native's mother might have passed away very early. So now, how Pushyami is achieving this? Because of the deity Brihaspati. Pushyami is at least achieving some kind of emotional stability. So, Pushyami Nakshatra, the amalgamation of Moon and Saturnian energies, having deity as Brihaspati, is achieving that emotional stability. So it's very important to consider Jupiter here, the ruling deity of Pushyami, in the equation here, because by itself, the combining of energies of Moon and Saturn is likely to give lot of sadness and melancholy and depression. When Saturn and Moon are conjoined, you say the person would be suffering from depression. That's for sure. Even see, if somebody is having Saturn and Moon conjunction, and you would say the native, you have some depression. And the native would say, if the native's Lagna Lord is somewhere strongly placed, the native would say, no, I don't have depression. Even the native would not know about his own depression. He just ask him how he is feeling in the evenings. As Saturn and Moon conjunction native, how the native is feeling in the evenings, especially the sunset time. The moment night is becoming more and more, the night, means the sky is becoming more and more darker. How the person's mental stability is, right? Because Moon is your mind and Saturn is occupying your mind. Saturn is shadowing your mind. Just imagine the problem, the kind of depression the person would be undergoing through, right? So definitely Saturn and Moon conjunction is not a good one, especially when it is happening in a Saturn Nakshatra, right? So this kind of depression, melancholy, the sadness of Saturn and Moon, amalgamation of Saturn and Moon energies is avoided here in the Pushyami by Brihaspati, Jupiter's energies, because Pushyami's deity is Jupiter. So it is Jupiter's energies which make Pushyami a very well balanced nakshatra. So in its negative aspect, however, the same Jupiterian energy manifests as shallowness and bigotry, dogmatism, right? If Jupiter is not well placed, if this Pushyami is afflicted, as we discussed in all our previous videos about Pushyami, bigotry, depending nature, asking for money, this is all present if Pushyami is afflicted. On a higher level, if you observe this Moon, Saturn and Jupiter influence together want to shape a beautiful world, you can say, right? An ideal world, because Moon, Saturn and Jupiter is balancing the energies of Moon and Saturn. When Moon and Saturn are balanced, that becomes a kind of great yoga, right? Because Moon and Saturn is, once they are balanced, then the Pushyami's level is very, very great, right? So Saturn is a mass planner, and so is Moon, a fact which makes Pushyami the most mass oriented of nakshatras. That's where you can find a lot of politicians with Pushyami nakshatra, On a positive level, both Moon and Saturn promote the mindset and values which help foster an idealized, civilized, and a great society. Moon and Saturn, in their negative aspect, make the masses, very bad. Even in times when the ruling forces are dark and corrupt, right? So, Pushyami Nakshatra people, if they are becoming politicians, just check the balancing of Moon and Saturn. If there is no balance, the person would be very darker and he would be a kind of a biggest corrupted politician. So, those with strong Moon Saturn in their charts become mass leaders in today's times. So, whenever you want to check, you want to see a person, uh, whenever you are observing a native's horoscope, if you observe Moon is very nicely placed and Saturn is also nicely placed, then you can definitely say the person can become a mass leader. So Moon and Saturn are very, very important in politics to become a very, very great leader. And Moon, Saturn, Jupiter conjunction in a horoscope carry energies similar to Pushyami Nakshatra. A well placed Moon, Jupiter, Sun, Venus, and Saturn give excellent results when placed in Pushyami Nakshatra. And of course, based on the padas also, right? So Pushyami 1 is going to Leo Navamsha, Pushyami 2 is going to the Virgo Navamsha, and when Venus is placed in Pushyami 2, what happens? That automatically goes to Virgo, which is not a good sign for Venus, an uncomfortable sign for Venus. So, in that case, you cannot comment much about Venus giving good results, right? Because as Venus is going to Pushyami Nakshatra's second pada, in the Navamsha, it is of course going to Virgo, the sign where Venus debilitates and the sign where Venus is not so energetic. So in that case, Venus would not give much good results. So those with strong moon and Saturn, they're very, very lucky. It's a very, very rare things, rare combination, you can say. And Mercury, Mars, and the nodes Rahu, Ketu, right? They do not give good results in this particular nakshatra generally. But of course, Mercury, when placed in Pushyami 2, it will go to Virgo. Then generally it can give some good things. And when Mars placed in Pushyami 4, it can go to Scorpio, its own sign. Then it is a bit better. But generally speaking, Mercury, Mars, Rahu, Ketu, they do not give good results in this nakshatra. Generally speaking, right? There are some exceptions like Mercury in Pushyami 2 is a bit better. Mars in Pushyami 4 is a bit better because it is going to Scorpio at least. But Mars is not so comfortable in the sign of Cancer anyways, right? As a generally speaking, when Mercury and Mars are placed in Pushyami Nakshatra, don't expect them to give very great results. And Rahu and Ketu are sitting in Cancer, that is Pushyami Nakshatra, do not expect Rahu and Ketu, when they are sitting in Pushyami Nakshatra, do not expect them to give very great results, but at least they give some kind of results, but based on um, based on their own placement. Like let's take Ketu. Ketu is in Pushyami 4. It's going to Scorpio, right? So Ketu, when going to Scorpio, you would say Scorpio would be the sign of Ketu, like Sagittarius. Sagittarius would be a sign of Ketu, right? So some people say Scorpio would also have some kind of energy similar to Ketu. So it may feel a bit comfortable, a bit fine, you can say. So based on the pada, you can comment much, but generally speaking, Mercury, Mars, Rahu, Ketu give average results, or if placed, if not well placed, then if Saturn's dignity is also not so good, let us say Ketu is in Pushyami, Saturn's dignity is not good, Saturn is, let us say, debilitated in the sign of Aries, somewhere in Ashwini or some, it's not so comfortable, then what kind of results you would expect? Even Ketu cannot give good results. Even Ketu is placed in Pushyami 4. Of course, in the Navamsha it will go to Scorpio, but the Pushyami's Lord Saturn is not so comfortable in the sign of Aries. It's not having enough energy. Then that Ketu going to Scorpio is not at all a good thing happening. So there's a fundamental thing in the astrology, Vedic astrology, we would say that every planet works for its nakshatra lord, right? This is one of the fundamental things. So a planet not only works on the house it is placed in, not only the houses it has the rulership on, but it also works for the houses where its nakshatra lord is present. So if you want me to give an example, let us say, let's take Venus is sitting in Pushyami Nakshatra 3, right? Pushyami Nakshatra 3, and so Venus is going to work for Saturn, because Pushyami's lord is Saturn. And let us say the person is Cancer ascendant, and Venus is placed in Pushyami 3, and so Cancer obviously becomes the first house, and Saturn is, let us say, sitting in the sign of Libra, where Saturn exalts. Now Venus is sitting in which house here? Cancer, the first house here in our example, and Saturn is sitting in the fourth house, Libra. And Venus works for what? That is the question. Venus works for which houses? As Venus is sitting in the first house, Cancer, of course Venus is going to work for the first house. And Venus has rulership of Libra, that's the fourth house, and also the 11th house, because Taurus is the 11th house here. So Venus also works for 4 and 11, and Venus also works for the house where Saturn is sitting. Saturn is sitting in, of course, Libra, which is again fourth house. Let us change Saturn to Scorpio, the fifth house. Now Venus works for the first house because Venus is sitting in the first house, that is Cancer, and Venus also works for the 4th and 11th houses, that are Libra and Taurus, because Venus has rulership on Libra and Taurus. That's 4 and 11 it works. So Venus works for 1, 4 and 11, and also Venus works for its nakshatra lord house, the house where its nakshatra lord is sitting, that is Saturn is sitting. Where Saturn is sitting here? Scorpio, that is the fifth house. So Venus also works for the fifth house. Totally, in our example, Venus works for 1, 4, 11 and 5. And some Vedic astrologers say the order is, here we are saying 1, 4, 11 and 5. 1 is the house Venus is sitting, 4 and 11 are the houses where Venus has the rulership, and 5th is the house where the nakshatra lord, that is Venus, is sitting in Pushyami. So Pushyami's lord is Saturn, sitting in 5th house, so 5th. So what order we are saying here? 1, 4, 11 and 5. But some Vedic astrologers are actually, they want to say the order as 5, 1, 4, 11. So they are giving more importance to the fifth house. Why? A Venus sitting in Pushyami, and Pushyami's Lord Saturn is sitting in the fifth house. So they are giving more importance to the Nakshatra Lord's placement. Every planet works for its Nakshatra Lord. If Venus is sitting in Pushyami Nakshatra, Venus has to work for Saturn because Pushyami's Lord is Saturn. If Saturn is sitting in the fifth house, yes, Venus has to work for fifth house. And if Saturn is sitting in somewhere in the ninth house, yes, Venus has to work for ninth house. And that should be the first priority. That should be the first priority. That is one of the important things, right? So first preference, generally we say first preference should be given to the house where the planet is actually sitting in. That is one argument, but another important argument is first preference should be given to the house where the Nakshatra Lord is placed, you know. So these are all the things, and of course every planet has to work for its own houses. That's in this case Venus has to work for Libra and Taurus. There is no other go because those are Venus' own houses. And Venus has to work for the house in which it is sitting in. It has to work for that one. Working for that house means what? Working for that house means working for the significations of that house. Right? So in our example, Venus is sitting in the ascendant Cancer. That is, ascendant means the first house. So Venus is sitting in the first house, Cancer. So Venus has to work for the first house significations. First house means what? Your health, your ideology, your life path, your physical body, your head. So Venus works on all those things. Not only that, Venus works for 4 and 11. 4 and 11 means what? Working for 4 and 11 means the fourth house significations. Your mother, your house, your property, your vehicles, your education, especially till plus 12, right? Plus 12 means we say 10th standard, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. These are all decided by the fourth house. And of course, fifth house decides your bachelor degree, and ninth house decides your master degree and PhD, the higher learning. Ninth house is the house of higher learning. If your ninth house is somewhere bad, and if you're doing PhD, your PhD would go a long years. If your ninth house does not have enough energy, it may go long years. If the ninth house has some malefic energy, then you may not pass your PhD, you may fail in your PhD, or you may have lot of obstacles in finishing your PhD or master degree if your ninth house is afflicted, right? Now, so that way, fourth house it has to work for, 11th house it has to work for. 11th house is the house of gains, right? And also the house of friends. These are all the things that Venus has to work on. And if Saturn is sitting in fifth house, and as Venus is sitting in Pushyami in our example, a fifth house is the house of romance, house of your bachelor, it's the house of your bachelor degree, and also fifth house is house of children, right? So this is how things work. So basically, so Pushyami is not a normal nakshatra. If Pushyami is very well, if some planet is very well placed in Pushyami, person can become a great politician. Not only that, if Moon and Saturn in a native's horoscope is very nicely placed, yes, the person can become a mass leader, because Saturn is mass and Moon can give the ideology related to mass, right? Both are a bit mass oriented, people oriented planets. And if you see, the Pushyami's sexual animal is a goat. So despite the fact that its sexual animal is not seen as an emblem of sexuality, Pushyami is supposed to be adept at all kinds of sensual and sexual activities. So its sexuality is more playful as opposed to intense. So if you see Aslesha's sexuality is very intense, but Pushyami's sexuality is a bit playful, a bit playful, joyful, right? Smooth, you can say. Now, Brihaspati is the deity, so we need to talk about Brihaspati because he is the deity of Pushyami and he has a very great role. He has a kind of, he has given the first place in so many things, and that Brihaspati is the deity of, Pushyami. And who is Brihaspati? Basically, he is the priest of the gods, is a lord of mantras and all types of initiations like agyas, etc. He is the priest of the gods, right? Priest of the gods. It's not a normal thing. And he's the lord of all the mantras. He knows all the mantras. Whatever mantra you say, he knows that. So that is the Brihaspati. And he relates to the waters of inner life which nourish the soul. If you drink water, that nourishes your body, but there are some divine waters, those can nourish your soul. And Brihaspati knows about those waters. He has that kind of waters. So Pushyami's spirituality relates to a high level of emotional maturity. So the waters that soul requires, the celestial waters, the divine waters, Brihaspati is related to those waters. It's not a normal thing. And its emotional strength, the Pushyami's emotional strength, finds outward manifestation through powerful speech. Pushyami has some noble qualities if some planets are well placed. It's not a normal nakshatra, but if it is afflicted, you would see it as a kind of waste. Such a nakshatra it is basically. The words generated from this nakshatra carry a certain spiritual energy, and that spiritual energy tend to affect others on a deep level. The words, the mantras, that are generated from Pushyami's energy are not normal mantras. And even we talked about it, the Pushyami 4, right? It can have the alien influences also. They can connect to alien influences. If you need to observe the whole horoscope, if the person has some prominent 8th house, prominent 12th house, the deeper, darker side, 8th house is a kind of darker side. If the person has a perfect darker side, the 12th house, spirituality, 8th house, the darker side, and somewhere the Pushyami energy is super activated, just imagine the person can be a kind of tantric, a very big tantric he can become, right? So we need to observe the energy of the whole horoscope. It's just like, if you saw somebody is having some 1 or 2 planets in Pushyami and other planets are very, very playful, very joyful, somewhere in the 4th house, beautiful cards, and having a lot of bank balance. If you observe these things, then this Pushyami's energy is actually working in that level, So the darker side of the horoscope, how much, deeply the person is involving in the darker side. You need to observe the whole horoscope. That's why, right? But Pushyami has this energy and the spiritual energy also. See, whenever you talk about Pushyami Nakshatra, you talk about a Vedic story, the Vedic story of Kamadhenu. Kamadhenu means a wish fulfilling cow. You know, a wish fulfilling cow. The cow can give you anything. That is the cow. That cow is called as Kamadhenu. It can fulfill any of your wishes. That is Kamadhenu, and it reveals a lot about Pushyami on all levels of its functioning. And what is the story? The story is a sage named Vasista had a cow named Kamadhenu. Basically, Vasista owns this cow, Kamadhenu, and a king, along with his 100 brothers, was hunting in the forest. When he came close to Vasista's hermitage and happened to see this wonderful cow, which could produce anything you wished for, so he's a king basically, right? A king actually, of course, the king is Vishwamitra. After that, you will know that. But the king came to a sage, Vasista, and Vasista has Kamadhenu, and the king saw that Kamadhenu, and what generally a king does, right? Because see, a sage is having Kamadhenu, and the Kamadhenu can give anything. A sage is having it. What if the same Kamadhenu is with a king? The king can produce, can wish for anything, and he what is a king basically? He wants to occupy lot of countries. He wants to win so many countries, right? He wants fame in so many countries. That's the basic nature of a king. So king came to Vasista here with his 100 brothers, and he saw the Kamadhenu, and he immediately wanted to have the cow to himself. So he ordered his soldiers to get it for him. So king just, he did not ask Vasista, hey Vasista, please give me your Kamadhenu, I want it. He did not ask it. Even he just sent soldiers, hey, bring that Kamadhenu, right? So the soldiers couldn't even budge the cow and came back empty handed. They were unable to even touch the cow. And the king then decided to go with his whole army and all of his brothers to get the cow. All of them came to Vasista actually to get this cow. Why the soldiers were not able to even touch? Because it's with Vasista. He's a very great sage, right? He has his own powers. And now what happened? Now Kamadhenu in the meantime had returned to, of course, they could not even touch it, but Kamadhenu is with Vasista, and of course, even Vasista was not there, initially. And Kamadhenu said, hey Vasista, these people are actually, uh, these the Kamadhenu expressed all the intentions of these kings and kings brothers and all the stuff, right? Now seeing the approaching army coming, Vasista ordered her to produce a whole army, because Kamadhenu is under the control of Vasista, and whatever Vasista says, the Kamadhenu is going to do it. And Kamadhenu's army defeated the king's army in a very short span of time. It doesn't even take, if you just imagine, even it did not take 1 second. So the whole army of this king, he trained that army for so many years. And now the Vasista's Kamadhenu produced an army, and that army was able to defeat this king's army in a second. Even less than a second, you can say. And that is, a very, very big magic, right? This Kamadenu's army defeated king's army in just less than a second. And Vasishtha personally killed the king's 100 brothers through the power of this Kamadenu's army. King's 100 brothers just died in less than a second. Look at the power of Kamadenu here, right? So the king was just, he is very, very revengeful now. And he was advised that the only way he can get stronger than Vasishtha was through penance. And see how the king would feel. He had a lot of army. He had 100 brothers, great brothers, big warriors, an army with full of warriors, and they just went to bring a cow, and the cow created an army. That's it, less than a second, his whole army, all his brothers dead. In less than a second. How the king would feel? He is now very, very revengeful, and he wanted to know the way to defeat this particular sage Vasishtha. He wanted to, very badly he wanted to defeat Vasishtha. He was very, very revengeful. So he asked some rishis, and they advised him, see, you cannot defeat Vasishtha with your kingly qualities. It's not at all possible. You need to perform penance. So he performed his penance, and when he left, he had procured enough divine asras, the celestial weapons, and yogic power, and he went back to challenge Vasishtha. Now, a king also got a lot of powers by his penance, right? The yogic powers, the celestial weapons, everything he got. Now he went to Vasishtha and again challenged him, right? So in the battle, all his weapons were effortlessly consumed by Vasishtha's staff, and he had to return disappointed and bereft of power. He was unable to defeat Vasishtha. He vowed himself that he would keep on doing his penance until he became equal or better than Vasishtha. So in the course of his long penance, he went through many adventures, and most importantly, a change of heart, which earned him the name Vishwamitra, a friend of the world. See, by the time he had reached the same Brahminical stature as Vasishtha, he had already forgotten about his revenge. Because when your level is increasing by penance, you forget about the revenge, right? So that's what happened to the king. The king is, of course, Vishwamitra, the friend of the world. So he had forgotten his revenge on Vasishtha. So, and it was Vasishtha himself who conferred on him the title of Brahmarshi. So by seeing Vishwamitra's penance and the greatness, the sage Vasishtha himself called, Vishwamitra as Brahmarshi. Brahmarshi means a sage fit for Brahmaloka. Brahmaloka is the abode of the created Brahma, and so Brahmarshi Vishwamitra he became. The king became Brahmarshi Vishwamitra, equivalent to Vasishtha, the great sage Vasishtha. So if we observe the story, it reveals the fascinating dynamics between, the Brahminical nature and the Kshatriya's nature. It means the priestly qualities and the Kshatriya's qualities. The priest class and the Kshatriya class. Right? So Pushyami, if you see, is a priestly nakshatra which belongs to a Kshatriya class, as we discussed in our previous videos. And an ideal playing field for this particular dynamic. See, Kshatriyas are supposed to be subservient to the Brahmin class despite their martial power, martial nature, right? So, because of the power which the true sages and priests have as a result of keeping in tune with the universal will, the Pushyami's strength, confidence, and power arise from its willingness to function as per the dictates of the universal mind here. So, the Pushyami's power is really as per the universal will, as per the universal mind. See, no amount of penance, hard work, or suffering can make one rise above the smooth, effortless power which arises out of the submission to the universal plan. If you're able to identify the universal plan and if your energies are in alignment with the universal plan, you would automatically change to a great level. You would automatically change to a great level if your ideology, if your path, if your mind and thoughts are in alignment with the universal will, you know. So that is the idea, that is the, can say, moral of the story, right? So here Vishwamitra, even though he did a lot of hard work, he is not able to become equivalent to sage Vasistha. See, sage Vasistha has Kamadhenu. He can do anything with Kamadhenu, but he's not doing it. He is just using Kamadhenu for the, religious ignyas and all the stuff. He never used Kamadhenu for his own selfish purposes. If he wanted to use, he could use, right? If you just like, he may ask Kamadhenu to, win over the world and get all his world on his feet. He could do that, but he never did it, right? Why? Because he is working as per the universal will, as per the universal mind, universal wish. So Vasistha never misused his powers. He just sitting in a forest in a small hut and using Kamadhenu, he was performing yajnas. That's it. He's leading a very peaceful life, very normal life, very, very religious life. And Vishwamitra, out of his arrogance, out of his ego, he was trying to capture Kamadhenu, he was trying to take away Kamadhenu. But after that, he was able to understand that great things should be with great people and for great purposes only. And that's where he forgot his revenge and he became Brahmarshi Vishwamitra. Right? So, whatever you do, no amount of penance, no amount of hard work, no amount of suffering, can fulfill your desires if your desires are bad. If your desires are not as per the universal mind, universal wish. So this particular nakshatra is actually, the Pushyami nakshatra is related to the sage Marichi. Marichi is one of the 7 celestial sages who is looking after the affairs of our galaxy, of course. And the name of this sage, if you observe, Marichi means the light in Sanskrit. So it's the light means, if you observe, Pushyami nakshatra is also a kind of swift nakshatra, just like Ashwini nakshatras. Some kind of similarities you can really observe. And if somebody is suffering from the bad effects resulting from the afflictions of this nakshatra, the best remedial measure is to pay reverence to cows, priests, gurus, and Brahmins. Because your Pushyami is bad, then yes, at least you need to make your Jupiter well. When your Jupiter is well, yes, you would have something better with Pushyami's energy. So if you are having some planets in Pushyami, but they're not working positively, instead they are working negatively, the best remedial measure is to pay a lot of reverence to cows, worship cows, give them food, respect them, right? And also priests, gurus, and Brahmins as well. But cows worship, reverence to cows is very, very important for those who are suffering from Pushyami Nakshatra's bad effects. See, one can also worship a benign mother goddess, but generally, cows worship is very much preferred for Pushyami afflicted people or malefic Pushyami energy people. Even persons who are benefiting from the positive energy of this nakshatra can also increase their good effects by worshipping cows. Any Pushyami energy person, go to the temple and worship cows. Give them food, and it is helpful for them to wear colors like white, yellow, orange, and golden shades, right? Especially for the persons who are benefiting from Pushyami energy, they can benefit more with these white, yellow, orange, and golden shades, not for the people who have afflicted or malefic energies with Pushyami. They only have to do cows worship, giving food to cows, right? And of course, if your Pushyami energy is very good and if it is working well for you, use all its directions, lunar month, all Pushyami days to initiate any kind of activities except marriage. So, you can see Pushyami is one of the best nakshatras, and it's one of the spiritual nakshatras, of course. And the main thing is, if you're having some affliction to Pushyami, some maleficness to Pushyami, it's very, very bad. Depending on others, asking money from others, bigotry, dependingness, very, very bad qualities would come. Bad things would come into your life. If you want to avoid all this, worship cows, worship cows. So, that is about Pushyami Nakshatra. So, Pushyami Nakshatra is also famous for love, emotional wholeness, calmness, soothingness, generosity, and richness. As we know, if it is working positive. And according to Varahamihira, if you observe, Pushyami Nakshatra is very lucky, learned, wealthy, ethical, and of a peaceful nature. That's a general behavior of Pushyami. Pushyami is a very soft, very good nakshatra, very, very positive, very nice nakshatra. If it is afflicted, we discussed multiple times, right? So bigotry and all the stuff, dependingness, addiction is another thing. Pushyami is afflicted, the person would definitely have some addiction, no doubt. Bigotry and asking money from others is also there. So this is about Pushyami Nakshatra. As a whole, it's a very, very good nakshatra. If it is afflicted, and then it's very, very bad nakshatra as well. you have to worship cows. Thanks for watching this video.